Welcome to Unit 3, Exploring Microsoft. The first step in this process will be to learn how to format a block style professional letter. A block style professional letter is what you use to send out for resumes and for businesses will send them out to clients. There is a standard way to set up the block style letter. So I'm going to walk through that with you right now. The first thing you do when you open up a letter is you're going to go up to your formatting marks underneath your paragraph ribbon, and you're going to turn those on. You need to be able to see the line spacing, and what that does, it allows you to see the spaces between your lines, and it also shows you the spaces between each letter. So working through this block style letter, if you look at the top, margins and fonts, top margin is 2 inches, left, right, and bottom are 1 inch. Your font size should be 12, and you have two choices for font type, or what we call the font family, Times New Roman or Arial. When you have a longer letter, it is best to use Times New Roman, since it is smaller print. When you have a shorter letter, using Arial works well because the print is a little bit larger. Your line spacing for a letter is single space. SS stands for single spaced. You have one space after a period, semicolon, comma, or colon. You also usually put one space after a period. It can be two. Right now, they have not changed that. You can either use one space. If you look here in this document, there's one space, or you can have two spaces and you notice there's two lines. Whatever you choose to do, make sure you are consistent throughout your letter. So either you're going to use one space after a period or you're going to use two, but stay consistent. The parts of the letter. At the very top, you're going to see the return address. I'm highlighting the return address. This would be your street name with its number, then the city, state, and zip code. Notice that after Detroit, there is a comma, or after the city name. And then also notice that the state is in capital letters, capital M, capital I, with no period. Whenever you capitalize both of these, you do not need a period after it. After the return address comes the next section, which is the date. Notice that the date is typed out. You don't put in 11/19. It is completely typed out. After the date, you're going to return 4 times. Notice there are 3 blank line spacing. On the 4th line, if you are calling this is the mailing address or the letter address, this would be who is receiving the letter. So this letter is going to Mr. Trevor DeLong at Microsoft Corporation. If you are sending it to someone specific and you want their attention, you'll type in attention on the first line, followed by the person's name. Then it precedes the letter address or mailing address, follows with the name of the company, the street name and address, then the city, state, and then the zip code. Then you return twice, leaving one blank space, and you'll type in the salutation. The salutation is the hello. You may start it with dear or who it may concern. If you do not know who it's going to, you would type in who it may concern. If you know who it's going to be dear Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. DeLong. You use Mrs. when, I'm going to type this in here, you use Mrs. when you know that the woman is married and she uses her married name in her professional career. If you do not know if the woman is married or single, you will use Ms., especially if you do not know what name they use as far as their professional name. A lot of career women will use their original name. So, or they will keep the married name, but they will use Ms. instead of Mrs. All right, so they kind of keep a separate identity. So if you do not know if they're married or single, for women, it'll be MS, period. It's the same as if you type MR period. So Mr. and Ms. are pretty much work the same way. Ms. does not indicate single. It indicates a generic title. Then you're going to hit the enter key once. Also notice that in the business world, block style letters are used because they want to get the letter typed up quickly. So they do omit some things. For example, after the salutation, notice that there's not a comma or a semicolon. Those commas and semicolons are a little more difficult to type, so they just leave them out. So there is no punctuation following the salutation. Return twice, leaving one blank space, and then you will type in your paragraphs. Now, this is very important. How do I know? I'm going to do this just so you have a sense of what's going on here. All right. Oops, I did that wrong. Let me do this. This is what I meant to do. Sorry. How do I know when a new paragraph starts and when a new paragraph ends? The best way is what we call soft return versus hard return. If you look on the first line, there is no backwards P. Notice here there's a backwards P. Notice on the first line there is no backward P because the word just wraps, the sentence just wraps around. That's called a soft return. When there is a hard return, like see this backward P, that's a hard return, and that always means start a new paragraph. So there, I know to start a new paragraph there. And again, if you notice in the second paragraph, these are all soft returns because there's no backwards P. But when I get down to the last line, I notice that there's a hard return, so I'm going to hit enter to show that I'm starting a new paragraph. So make sure you know the difference between a soft return and a hard return. This is also called the body of the letter. Once you finish the last paragraph, you're going to hit enter twice, and then you'll type in sincerely, or you may use cordially or sincerely yours. Notice too, for sincerely, there is no punctuation after sincerely, again, because we're just kind of taking a shortcut in the business world, and it's acknowledged that you would not have punctuation there. Then you're going to return 4 times, leaving 3 blank spaces, and then you're going to type in the writer of the letter. This would be the person who's actually sending the letter to Mr. DeLong. So the person who's writing this letter is Mrs. Barbara Snodgrass. She is a business teacher. So here is the writer of the letter. There's a hard return, so we know we're starting a new line. And this is her title. This could be doctor. It could be a lawyer. Whatever title it is they would put after their name. Notice there is no blanks, no empty lines. All right, so it's just right underneath. So you have the complimentary close, which is the goodbye. Then you have the writer. Then you have the business teacher. And this blank space that you leave between is where the writer, Barbara Snodgrass, will sign her name. And looking at her name, you know she's married, all right? And she is using her married name. Now, what are proofers' initials? I'll move this up a little bit. Proofers' initials are the person who typed the letter, but it's not Barbara Snodgrass. It's probably her secretary. So CTD refers to the person who actually typed up the letter. So in this case, the proofer's initials are put in lowercase. They're not capitalized. There's no periods, right? But if Mrs. Barbara Snodgrass actually typed up this letter, you would not put in your proofer's initials. It's assumed, if there's no proofer's initials, that you typed up your own letter. So, and then lastly, we have enclosure or attachment. These are included. Enclosure is included when you are enclosing a document with your letter, but it's not attached. Attachment is used when you're actually attaching a document to the letter. For example, you staple it together. Then it's an attachment. If it's just enclosed, it's enclosure. If you are not attaching or enclosing a letter or a document, then you would not use enclosure or attachment. And usually you can tell if they're supposed to be enclosure or attachment by looking at the last paragraph. That's usually where they will tell you that they are enclosing something or they're sending something. If you don't see the words enclosed or attached, then you know that you do not have an enclosure or attachment. So you have to look, you have to read the letter. All right, key letter spacing reminders. After the date and complimentary close, there are 3 paragraph markers. All other spacing, you use 1 paragraph marker. You never, ever, ever will have 2, just 2 paragraph markers. Signature, you use cursive. You write your name between the complimentary close and the writer of the letter after you print off the letter. So I'm going to write it in here. Now, if you are sending this online, then you should have some kind of tool that will allow you to actually sign your name here. And again, just enclosure used when another document is included with the letter, but not attached. Attachment is used when another document is attached to the letter. So there you have a synopsis of what a block style letter is. So when you go to actually format your first block style letter, the first thing you're going to do, I've got to go get a letter here. The first thing you're going to do is open up the letter that you want to format. I'll go in here. That's not the letter I want. Give me a sec, I'll find it. Oops. Those aren't it. Maybe it's 3. Give me a second here. That's the memo. I'm going to keep that. No, I don't need that. And then 4 must be the letter. What's going on? Oh, I'm going to have an issue here. I don't think. There we go. All right, so I wanted to make sure that worked. So when you have, oops, it's not open. I got to go back and open it again. Sorry about that. All right, after you open up your document, okay, it's open. To view them side by side, which is what you want to do. No, it's frozen right now. Give me a second. Okay. To view this side by side, you're going to go to your View tab, click View Side by Side, and then now I have them viewed together. All right, I can make that a little bit bigger. If you use the control wheel of the mouse, you can make your images smaller or larger. All right, now I can go through and actually format this letter according to these guidelines. Now, when you look at this letter, you're going to notice that after the student street address, that means put in your address, there is a slash, a backslash. That means start a new line. So whatever you see these backslashes, they go on separate lines. But as far as spacing goes between them, you will have to check your letter to know the proper spacing. When you have finished formatting this document, then you are to call your teacher over and have them proof that letter to make sure you have done it correctly. I'm going to exit out of this. So we have covered the block style letter. It's now time for you to go to Google Classroom and find the next step of formatting a block style letter. Have fun.